Congress has become barely functioning assisted living facility with subpoena power. At some point, public services become public squatting.
5 stories, no BS.
3 weeks after Trump signed a peace deal at Versailles, that's never gone wrong before, he stood at the NATO summit in Ankara and declared it dead. He said, quote, "I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore." Iranians. They're scum, he told reporters, right as CENTCOM launched a second straight day of strikes and oil prices spiked. This isn't a return to war so much as an admission that the war never really stopped.
Look, I've said this before. I think going to war with Iran was probably the right thing to do. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But Trump seemed to forget something very important, that he is accountable to the American people. But he gave zero explanations, no proof, no evidence that they were even close to a nuclear weapon. And it's no wonder Americans oppose this war by huge margins. But what makes this such a disaster is that Trump is actually fighting the wrong war. He is busy with missile strikes and blowing up things, which is great for TV. But Iran's opportunity to inflict maximum damage is not what they can blow up, but it is the midterm elections. They know the American people are not with him on this. They know they can spike oil prices, and Iran is aware of the political calendar. And all they have to do is provoke Trump, and he responds. And it drives up oil prices, and it hurts Trump, and it hurts the GOP. And Trump just can't ignore the attacks, otherwise he looks weak. So the bottom line is Trump put himself in a no-win situation, all on his doing, and that's why it's a disaster.
I would say when it comes to launching the war originally, I would interject, au contraire, mon frere. I don't think that this was ever a very good idea. That said, I think what the real takeaway here is that Trump just gets bored. He has never been interested in governing. He's not really interested in being president or being the commander in chief or really doing anything. He's interested in getting noticed, getting flattery, getting fake peace prizes. And so when his attention wanders, when he actually has to do the hard work that goes with being president, he flops, he fails. And that's what we're seeing with Iran.
And the other consequence here is that the Pentagon is literally running out of money. Mitch McConnell, who's been hospitalized since June 14th, his office has given almost no details about why. He's not appeared publicly or released a photo or video since. Now, I know you love to read Laura Loomer, but in case our audience didn't or they don't know who she is, this is the wackadoodle far-right conspiracy activist and Trump loyalist who has said she has from a high-level source that McConnell is actually brain dead, on life support, with organ failure, and believes that he is just being propped up by the establishment. And this is all just to kill the Save America Act. The governor of Kentucky is demanding proof of life. Matt, is this just another weekend at Bernie's moment?
I don't want to laugh about a situation that involves a human being possibly on his deathbed, but there is this weird, as you said, weekend at Mitch's element to this. Look, I don't think this is a particularly partisan issue, notwithstanding Ms. Loomer's rantings. We've seen similar stories, Dianne Feinstein, Kay Granger, aging members of Congress whose staffs and offices kind of try to keep them hanging on out of deference to them or not wanting to complicate things politically. But even though both parties have engaged in a little bit of this, it's of course completely wrong to have someone who's not able to do the job anymore in office. And even if it would involve putting in another MAGA Republican to replace McConnell, and that's not good for my party, that is good for America. The people of Kentucky should be represented in the U.S. Senate.
This is the single biggest proof point of why we need term limits and age limits. Congress has become barely functioning assisted living facility with subpoena power. At some point, public services become public squatting.
I can't imagine a bigger step on a rake moment for Republicans in Congress. And this follows what the previous record holder was, which was last week's, hey, we passed a beneficial housing bill on the biggest issue, affordability, that our voters are screaming at us about. Let's take the win. And Trump said no. So I thought that was like a low watermark. No, hold my beer, said Mike Johnson, because in the past week, Congress has failed to extend its defunding of Planned Parenthood through Medicaid. And by failing to do so, it's turned the funding spigot back on for Planned Parenthood. You heard that right, folks. If you are a conservative, if you are pro-life in some way, Republicans in Congress just funded Planned Parenthood.
Mike Johnson's going to go down as the worst speaker in the history of Congress. And I'm including Nancy Pelosi in this list, who I disagreed with everything, but she at least knew how to run the House. She could count votes, manage her conference, protect her members, and get things done. Mike Johnson looks like he's constantly being surprised by the job. This is unconscionable, and it's going to be very hard for us to go back and campaign to say, yes, trust us. We can govern. We can do things. We had an opportunity as Republicans to usher in a new era of conservatism, and we blew it. We just can't get out of our own way.
You know what's a shocking contrast that's just occurred to me? Zohran Mamdani. I think both you and I were skeptical that a Democratic socialist who had made such lofty promises of what he was going to do, freeze the rent, free buses, low-cost city-owned grocery stores, the list goes on, that he was going to be able to govern. The history of socialist governance in big cities or any big government structure in America is spotty at best. I'm a New York City native. All reports from my people on the ground there are that he's doing a pretty good job. He's being pretty practical. He's making some compromises. He's making the trains run on time. He's making the not so free buses run on time. And meanwhile, you have Mike Johnson just proving once again that Republicans cannot govern and can't deliver on the things that the American people want the most.
The White House spent the week trying to show voters that it is doing something about prices. Trump promoted the new Freedom Fuel gas stations in Philadelphia, selling gas at $3.47. The 47 cents is a nod to him being the 47th president. And at the same time, USDA officials pressured Walmart and other grocers to cut beef prices before the 4th of July, which is why this all feels less like an economic plan and more like price theater.
This connects to the point I was making earlier about Trump not caring at all about the messy details of governing, not really caring about policy, not really caring about Americans at all. Mike Johnson obviously has no idea what goes into doing this job. Trump seems determined to believe that he can just hand wave things. We can say that we're solving problems. COVID's going to zero. We have no problem with tariffs. This is going to be amazing. And reality doesn't matter. And so we got signal after signal in the past week that things are going really badly in terms of Americans' economic pain. Clean energy groups are pointing out that Trump's attacks on wind and solar are pushing electric rates substantially higher nationally. Republican SNAP cuts have pushed hundreds of thousands of Arizonans, that's a swing state, off of food stamps. Medicaid cuts are becoming a live, rising political issue in places like Iowa, a must-hold Senate state for Republicans. And of course, we have the gas price spikes and the fact that 2.6 million Americans have failed to re-enroll in the Affordable Care Act. I know that this is a point of disagreement between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans don't like the Affordable Care Act. Democrats do. But the point is, this is the way that we're getting Americans somewhat more affordable health care. And Republicans refused. They would rather have shut down the government. They refused to pass the subsidies that were making healthcare more affordable for Americans. 3/4 of the people who received those subsidies are in states that voted for Donald Trump. So when you see the numbers that we're going to get into in our battlefield segment in just a couple of minutes, when you see these kinds of deeply negative numbers for Trump and the Republican Party, this is the beating pulse that's underneath them. All of these indicators of just how dysfunctional governing Republicans have been and how much that's showing up in Americans' economic pain and how pissed off they are about it.
My biggest problem is that this is government-directed economic theater. The president's not creating durable competition, expanding supply, or removing structural barriers. His administration is leaning on selected companies to deliver politically useful prices on politically useful products at politically useful moments. That is not free market. That is just theater, and it's not going to help us when it comes to building our party long term or winning in November.
The DOJ's Civil Rights Division sent letters this week to election officials in all 50 states and DC, threatening criminal prosecution if any non-citizens end up on voter rolls or end up casting ballots, even though, as we've gone over time and time again, non-citizen voting is extraordinarily rare. It is a wisp. It barely ever happens. You're more likely to die in a Sharknado than ever witness a non-citizen voting. This is the latest example of theater of Trump's DOJ trying to build a case that elections are rigged and are fundamentally unfair, and there's big conspiracies going on, and it's all BS.
He's not trying to solve voter fraud. He's trying to manufacture an appearance of voter fraud crackdown. He is weaponizing the Department of Justice to generate headlines, feed the base, and create a cloud of suspicion before the election happens. We are going to lose the House. This is all just setting a stage, because if you talk to the base, which I do a lot, they believe every little thing that Trump says. When we talk about Laura Loomer and the conspiracy theories against Mitch McConnell, they eat that shit up. And so what we're battling is what is being fed to them to get them angry. And that's what Trump does.